Thanks for coming tonight. So we are going to, this is workshop number 2. I guess it's technically workshop number 3. But tonight we're going to cover the first half of due diligence. Also as a reminder, tonight your 3 companies are due. How's that going? Good? Everybody was able to find at least 3 that they like? Okay, great. Yes.
I just have a quick question. Is it okay that they're across 3 different industries?
Totally fine.
Totally fine.
Yep, they can be whatever. There doesn't have to be a theme across them at all. So, Brooke, how do they submit those?
So this is sent out in the email that was sent out to everyone earlier. So if you send it to VCCC3Cs@ugrowthfund.com and just submit it there, that'd be great. But in the email that got sent out earlier this week, there was a basic list of criteria and requirements for whatever submission that you're putting in, and just what we want to see for each company that you submit. And so if you could send that in as well as the ranking of your companies, that would be great. Just send it to the email. Also, if you're so the email that was sent out earlier this week from it was 2 days ago about this event. In that email are instructions on how to submit it, each submission, and what requirements you have for the submission for each of the companies. And then you're gonna send that to the VCCC@ugrowthfund.com.
Are you referring to when it said when in the Word document you spit your name? It was
company name, how you sourced it, what
and
you
the
think is
reasons.
opportunity.
Right.
And don't forget your team name too.
Yeah.
So team name,
Yeah.
and then for each of the 3 companies, you're going to list the name of the company, how you sourced it. That could be as simple as Seed Invest / Acme Company, right? Or whatever the URL is. Or it could be more complex, I have this neighbor and he runs this company and blah, 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 right? We just want some sort of description on how you sourced it. Be really short, and then a little bit about the company and why it's compelling. It could be really short.
And please send it as a Word document so we can give feedback. Because what we're planning to do with the 2 submissions that you're gonna have, so the first one's the 3, your top 3 companies, and the second part is your memo for the company that you decided to do due diligence on. And so if you submit it in a Word document, different people who have worked at UGF for a long time are going to give you feedback on your due diligence, as well as the companies that you're looking at, just as far as things you should be looking out for, just general advice on how you can improve your work.
Yep. The goal is to give you lots of feedback throughout the process. So submit the stuff in Word, and then, like Brooke said, we'll give you some feedback.
Yeah. And if you aren't getting the emails that we're sending out over every week, please let me know. Because there's been some issues with some people's emails, but I don't know who you are, so sorry. But let me know if you aren't getting those emails.
Is the information on the website on how to submit and what to submit?
Yes.
Great. So that's another place you can go. All right, great. Well, tonight, let's go through the agenda. So we're going to talk about business. We're going to talk about 3 pieces of due diligence. We're going to talk about business strategy, markets, and competition. And then, we'll review some of the deadlines. And then we have a few student associates with me here tonight. So Peter and Katie, as well as Brooke. And we will spend some time at the end going around and chatting with you to understand how you guys are doing in the process and see where we can be helpful. Sound good? All right, so let's dive right into it. All right, so does anybody know who Mike Maples is? Probably not. He is one of the more successful angel investors in Silicon Valley. And his quote is saying, "We were looking for a pain so big you needed a tourniquet. You didn't get it, you were going to die." What he's referring to is when he was looking at potential companies to invest in. It's not enough just to have solve a little problem. You want to solve a problem that's so important to your customer that they are going to die without, right? Yes. Anybody ever heard of the painkiller versus vitamin analogy? What is it? What's the analogy?
So if you're vitamins are optional, it's not really crucial for my health.
It's good to
arguably.
Yeah, good for you, but
after surgery, a pain medication is almost absolutely required to function.
How many people have been in excruciating pain, like a migraine or something like that? How much would you pay in that instance for relief? A lot, right? You'd give a lot for it. How about in that same moment, what would you give for like, some vitamin C? Probably nothing, right? So again, that's what we're looking for. You're looking for a company that is solving a pain that is really, really, really strong, right? Because if it's a really strong pain point, they will be willing to pay a lot of money for it, right? And they're probably less likely to give it up once they start using it, right? So that's kind of lesson 1 from business strategy that I want you to take away. On your 3 companies, I want you to look at them and I want you to kind of evaluate, is the pain point this company is solving like a nice to have, like a vitamin? Or is it like a tourniquet? You don't get it, you're gonna die. Does that make sense? And the reality is everything falls on this spectrum, right? Life and death and like nice to have. And it's not critical that every single thing you invest in is like life and death, but the further it is over on that spectrum, right, the stronger it's going to be, especially from a venture investing perspective, right? Now, don't get me wrong, vitamins is like an $8 billion industry, so clearly you can make money there, right? But pharmaceuticals is like $1 trillion industry, so you can kind of gauge kind of the difference there. All right. Who knows who this guy is?
Not McDonald's. Like,
Well, it's not McDonald's.
yeah, it's a dude with the ID, right? Like,
Yeah, somebody says name.
Yeah,
Ray Kroc. How many people have seen the movie The Founder? So this story was so great until that movie came out. Now everybody knows the story. Here's the story. So Ray Kroc is at a party with a bunch of friends, and they are all like, he comes up to me and he's like, "What business am I in, guys?" And they're like, "Ray, it's obvious. You're in the burger business." He's like, "Nope, not in the burger business. I am in the real estate business." What do you think he meant by that? Those of you who've seen the movie, you can cheat and tell us why. Yeah.
He gets lease payments from people who what's the word for it? It's F word. It's a franchise from him. So they pay rent, leasing.
Yeah, okay, so who owns the land that the McDonald's are located on? McDonald's does, right? Not the franchisee. The franchisor owns the land, right? And how important is the land to the success of a McDonald's, do you think? The location?
Critical.
It's critical, right? It's absolutely critical. If I put a McDonald's out in the middle of nowhere, nobody's going to go to it, right? But if I put it right in a heavy trafficked area, I'm going to get probably a lot of customers. In fact, McDonald's is so good at this that you know how Burger King selects their locations of where to put a Burger King?
Further from McDonald's.
Right next to McDonald's. They don't even spend the effort to figure it out because they know that McDonald's has done all the hard work. They just build one right next door. So, and if you think about it, right, there's 2 things happening there. One, the value that McDonald's brings, right, is all the things that you think, right? It's the recipes and the system and the brand and all that other things. But a big part of the value there is like McDonald's doesn't make the best tasting hamburger, right? Why do you go to McDonald's? Convenience, right? You know exactly what you're going to get, and it's convenient. And location is a big, big, big part of offering that convenience value, right? And so for Ray Kroc, he's absolutely right. He's in the real estate game for 2 reasons. One, they create value by owning the real estate that is convenient. And 2, they extract value from their customers by owning that real estate and leasing it back to them. And this is important because when you're analyzing these companies, you need to understand how a company creates value and how a company extracts value. Does that make sense? From its customers, right? That's basically like, I value that hamburger at $10, and McDonald's has figured out a way to get me to pay $8 for it, so they've extracted $8 of that $10 of value that they've provided me. Does that make sense? And I get to keep $2 of surplus, right? Benefit, right, that I have to pay for. Okay. So spend some time thinking through your business, the product they offer, the value they're creating, and then how are they capturing that value, right, from their customer. Now, there are lots of businesses, I'll just make one note to hopefully help clarify this. There are lots of businesses that create a lot of value, but do a horrible job at capturing that value. Does anybody have an example of something that would fall in that line?
You restate your question.
Companies that create a lot of value, but do a very bad job of capturing of that value.
Maybe WeWork.
WeWork?
Yeah, they created a pretty valuable program or
Yeah.
app essentially.
Yeah.
But their follow through was terrible. They didn't have a great way of extracting that dollar back.
So WeWork's a little tough because yes, their valuation is getting crushed right now. But they actually offer a service and they extract quite a bit of value from their customers. Customers pay a lot of money for that service they get. I think a good example here would be like aspirin. It's not a bad example, right? Aspirin is pretty cheap, right? But if you are in a lot of pain, aspirin can, reduce that pain, right? So aspirin provides a lot of value to the people that take aspirin, but the companies that sell aspirin probably don't make a whole lot of money selling it, right? Does that make sense? From a margin perspective, right? Like, I'm willing to pay $20 for a bottle of aspirin, but I only have to pay $5, right? Because there's no patents protecting it, anybody can produce it, et cetera, et cetera. Does that make sense? So this brings us to the next piece of business strategy, which is it's not enough just to create value, you have to be able to capture value, and the way you do that is with business strategy. We're going to talk about that in a little bit more depth. Before we do, let's do a little bit of an exercise. So I've got two companies here that hopefully you are all familiar with. Anybody not familiar with Facebook or Lyft? Good. Okay. So let's talk about Facebook. What is the pain point that Facebook solves? Yes.
People want to meet new people and find out stuff about them.
Okay, meet new people.
Before Facebook.
Maybe even more important than meeting new people.
Stay in contact with them.
Yeah, you want to stay in contact. You want to stay in touch with people that you know, right? But it's both, right? I want to meet new people and I want to stay in contact. And what else? I want to be able to share and express myself and share what's going on in my life, right, with other people that I care about, right? That's the need, right? Is that a big need? Small need?
Big need.
A pretty big need, actually, right? Like we could be critical and be like, nobody needs, 500 likes on their picture. But the reality is we're social animals and we want to interact with people and we want to build relationships and those kinds of things create a lot of fulfillment in our lives, right? And if we don't have that, frankly, we kind of go crazy, right? So it's a pretty big need. All right, so that's the pain point. Who fills the pain point?
The users.
The users, okay. And how does the company solve the pain point?
Offer the platform.
Yeah, they offer the platform.
It provides free service technically for the user.
Yeah. All right, let's switch it up a little bit. How many of you pay for Facebook? Nobody pays for Facebook.
Yeah.
So are you the customer?
No,
No, you're actually probably the product, right? Who's the customer?
it's all advertising.
Advertisers. So does it really matter that we're social animals and blah, blah, blah? No. Who has a pain point? The advertisers. What is that pain point?
They want to get to us.
They want to reach customers, but they don't just want to reach customers. They want to reach customers in a targeted way. Why do they want to do it in a targeted way?
They don't waste money and resources.
They don't waste money and resources, targeting people that could care less, right? I don't particularly care about sports. And so when I see ads for sports, I'm like, that's cool, but I don't care, right? But I do like Star Wars, let's say, right? So when I see ads for Star Wars, that's actually relevant to me. That's interesting, right? I'm more likely to buy that whatever it is that they're selling, right? So that's what Facebook does. That's the pain point that reduces costs. Is this life and death for advertisers to be able to do targeted ads?
Yeah.
Absolutely, totally life and death. If they can't do targeted ads and sell ads effectively and efficiently and so forth, they go out of business, right? Life and death. Okay. How does the company solve the pain point?
They sell that data and that resources to those companies that advertise.
Yeah, they create this really cool social network and they leverage, right, this need that we have to express ourselves and like and share and everything else to get us to put all of that information out there, right, for free. Then they organize all of that data and they put it in a platform and they make it really easy for Facebook to use it to send us targeted ads. And let's be honest, right, like that's not necessarily a bad thing because frankly, I would rather see more Star Wars ads in my life and content than more like Dallas Cowboys ads, right? Nothing against Dallas Cowboys, but I just could care less, right? So for me, like that's actually some value, like, you know, as a user. Okay, let's talk about Lyft. Let's start with the right question. Who is the customer?
Us.
Who's us? Who's the consumer?
Anyone who needs a ride.
People who need a ride? What do you think?
I think it's both people that want to give rides as well.
Okay.
Massive.
Who do you think's the more target customer?
That's tough.
The rider or the driver?
I want to say the rider.
The driver, because their car's sitting there wasting money. That makes sense.
It's the driver, right? Let's think about, okay, what's the pain point? Let's talk about the pain point for both.
They're wasting money on their car, not using it. Their car is depreciating in value and not creating any value.
You think that's really the driver? People are like looking at their car and, man, it's just
I never
money.
thought about that.
I could be driving it.
Flexibility.
Flexible
Like,
income.
lifestyle.
Yeah.
Like,
Flexible
you're not
income.
tied to it. Yeah, you need money.
You need money. That is the pain point. Like, I need money, right? And I need to earn money in a way that fits my lifestyle, right? That's the pain point. Life or death?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much life or death. I don't have food. I don't have money. I can't buy food. I'm dead, right? Life and death, right? Okay. How about the rider?
They don't want to wait down.
I need to get from point A to point B. Life and death?
Can be.
Could be, but probably not actually life and death, right? It's probably somewhere in the spectrum, right? It's pretty important, but there's a lot of other substitutes. I could walk even, I could ride a bike, I could drive my own car, I could take a taxi, take a bus, I could rent a car, right? Like there's lots of things, right? And in some situations, yeah, it would be life and death, but in others, like, well, I just missed that meeting, right? Okay, so we talked about who feels the pain point. How does the company solve the pain point? So if you're a rider, it's really easy, right? Make it really easy for you to get from call a car and go from point A to point B. How about for the driver? Yeah.
I think for both, it's also flexibility because it's like, let's say you used to be able to wait for a cab that's open or Lyft, like you can pick when you want to do it as well as the driver, they can pick when they want to drive. And then every time I ask the Lyft driver or Uber driver, why do you like to do this? They're like, oh, it's just my own time.
Yeah.
Same with me, I can go whenever I want to come back.
Yeah. No, there definitely is a convenience factor that value. Absolutely. All right, but let's look at that from the driver perspective. What value does Lyft offer? So imagine Lyft doesn't exist. And you have a car and you've got some time and you want to start your own little taxi service. What do you got to do?
Just start rolling the window and yelling at people.
So you got to get customers. That's the biggest one, right? Okay, now I get what else? You need customers.
You gotta look legit.
Gotta look legit.
You might have to get insurance. You might have to get.
I got to get insurance. How are they going to pay me?
Register your own business.
How are they going to pay me?
Cash.
Cash? Can I take credit cards? Like, that's kind of a hassle, right? Right? What about like knowing whether or not my customer is like somebody I want to give a ride to? That's pretty important, right? So Lyft does a bunch of these things, right? The biggest one is they get you customers. That's huge, right? There's no other way for you to go out and start this without a Lyft or an Uber, because it would be like almost impossible for you to like, you'd have to spend a ton of money just to get your marketing out there and build a brand and get customers, right? So they solve that. They solve the insurance. They make it really easy for customers to pay, right? Even easier than swiping a credit card and through a terminal in the car, right? Like I get in the car, I get out the car, the app takes care of everything. It's awesome, right? They provide background checks. They provide a rating system. They provide all kinds of perks. Like there are a lot of things. And if you really look at Lyft and you really understand Lyft, they are very focused on the driver as their customer. Because at the end of the day, who pays them? The driver pays that Lyft a cut of what they made, and that you paid the driver. Does that make sense? Ultimately, right? And if you look at how they charge for it, they charge like this like safety fee that kind of covers your insurance, and then they even price it in a way that kind of aligns with how they're capturing value relative to the value they create. All right. So I like walking through those two examples because hopefully it helps you get a grasp of like who's the customer, right? The customer is the person that pays for the product or pays for the value they're receiving. Also, hopefully helps you think through like a business model, right? And what factors matter within that business model. And also understand that it's not always like what you think it's going to be, right? With Facebook, you and I are not the customer, right? Unless you buy advertising on their platform. All right. What is business strategy? How would you explain it? How would you define it? What does it mean? Business strategy. Come on, aren't there a bunch of you business students?
It's just going to be choosing the decision or the path that's best for your business.
Okay, so something around like path or a plan or execution.
Dealing with competitors and problems.
And then like how you position yourself compared to competitors, right? Yeah, that's good. All right, this is how I think about strategy. Strategy is the art of creating monopolies. Now, why is it the art of creating monopolies?
You have to do it legally. You can't.
You have to do it legally, okay, yeah.
You're the last person to run out of money. You own everything.
Okay, yeah, to an extent, yeah.
You also have all the pricing power because there's no competitors.
Right, that's the big thing, right? You have pricing power relative to the competition, right? And if you have pricing power, that means hopefully that your margins are a lot higher, right? Right, which means that you're going to generate more profits, okay? Does it? If I have a monopoly, does that mean I can charge whatever I want?
Not necessarily.
No, because I still have to provide, like what I can charge can't exceed the value that people are extracting. Does that make sense? So, or that people are, my customers are receiving. But nonetheless, if we go back to my aspirin example, right? Aspirin, no patents, whatever, they're like companies don't have a monopoly on aspirin, right? Pretty much any pharmaceutical company can make aspirin, right, and sell it. But there are lots of different painkillers out there where there are patents on the painkiller. And how do you think the margins and the profits of those drugs compare to aspirin?
A lot higher.
They're like way higher, right? Because that company effectively has a monopoly over that particular drug. Does that make sense? So that's what we're getting at. And the thing with venture capital is, remember how we've talked about how in order, like you need to make an investment, you need to make investments that have the potential of returning your entire fund, right? This whole idea of power law distribution, that there's going to be one or two deals that just drive all the returns on your fund, right? part of this is the reason those companies are so highly valued is because they are monopolies in their space. They generate or have the potential to generate massive profits over their lifetime. And so people place a very high value on them. Does that make sense? And so as a venture capitalist, your job is to identify whether or not the company you're investing in has the potential to be a monopoly or is a monopoly or something along those lines, right? Now, when the first people invested in Lyft, was Lyft a monopoly at that point? No. Right? It was an idea, right? Today, is Lyft a monopoly?
No.
Are you sure? Do they have monopolistic power? How hard do you think it is to stand up a competitor to Lyft?
Well, there's already a competitor.
Another competitor. How hard is it to stand up
For
another
another competitor to start, it'd be very, very hard.
Very hard, right? So I would argue Lyft actually has some monopolistic power, right? It's probably really hard to start another competitor to Lyft. Now, yes, Uber is there, and I didn't say anything about like you can't have any competition and be a monopoly, right? But the more of a monopoly you are, right? Again, this is a spectrum, right? The more of a monopoly or the more monopolistic power you have, the better profits you're going to be able to generate. Now, if Lyft didn't exist or if Uber didn't exist, then that other company would probably generate more profits than it does today. But nonetheless, it's really hard to stand up a competitor, and arguably Lyft is going to generate more profits than if you were to try to compete with them with a brand new business. Yeah.
Would you be willing to elaborate on what a monopoly is then? Because I guess what I thought of a monopoly is like something like the patent that no one can recreate. But when you talk about Lyft and Uber, like that doesn't feel like a monopoly. So maybe you could elaborate what defines a monopoly to you then.
All right, well, let's think about it this way. If I want to get from point A to point B and I want to do it in a very convenient way, how many options do I have?
From point A to point B?
Yeah.
Are you talking about me or like with companies that like offer me tools to do that?
Some companies that offer me tools to do that, right?
I mean, there's a lot. I could use the bird scooters. I could drive
Yeah.
on Lyft. There's a lot of different.
Okay, what if I want to go further than a Lyft scooter will take me in a reasonable amount of time, or I don't want to freeze to death, right?
It's getting less. We're starting to move to like Uber and Lyft.
Right.
There's no other companies.
Right? I can take a taxi, which is going to be more expensive
Taxi.
and more of a headache and less convenient, right? Or I'm pretty much Uber or Lyft. That's pretty much it. That feels like a company that's got some monopolistic power. Now, are they a pure play, 100% monopoly? No. But are they on the spectrum? Yes. You want to be on the spectrum. Now, the further along on that spectrum you can get, the better, right? There are very few companies that make it all the way on the end of that spectrum, right? But they're some of the most valued most highly valued companies in the world, right? How many other Facebooks are there? Like 0, right? How many other Googles are there? I just heard the other day that apparently Bing is now moving all of their search engine over to Google. But Google is it, right? They are the monopoly for search, right? So now that doesn't mean like you have to be worth $1 trillion like Google is, right? To have a successful exit. But the further you are on that spectrum towards a monopoly, the better. And this is why it's the art of creating monopolies, is strategy, because you're trying to figure out how can I take my company and gain some monopolistic power, right? Where I have some pricing power, right? I can kind of dictate what the price is, right? Because I don't have any other competitors doing exactly what I'm doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yes.
Well, I was just going to say, just out of curiosity, do you consider Verizon and AT&T a type of duopoly, kind of like Lyft and Uber?
To a certain extent, yeah, I think for sure. Here's the thing, every company that doesn't sell commodities, right, that's what they're trying to do, right? So even if it's something as simple as like salt, okay, salt, right? Salt is a total commodity, right? But if you were to start a salt company today, you would probably like put a brand on it. Maybe you'd like put it in a really cool container. You do all these things to make it stand out and be apart, right? Because by being different, you're hopefully going to appeal to a certain type of customer, and that customer will want to buy your product, and hopefully they're willing to pay more for your product than just normal table salt. Does that make sense? That company is trying to become a monopoly. They're trying to like own their very own specialty salt solution, right? Okay, so there are lots of different ways that you can become a monopoly. What you need to do is spend some time looking at your company and trying to figure out, do they have the potential of creating monopoly, creating some pricing power, whatever it is, and where are they going to fall in that spectrum over the long run, right? The thing with Lyft and Uber is even though it's a kind of a duopoly, it's really hard to launch a competitor because you have this network effect and dual market problem. I got to get drivers and I got to get riders. And unless I have both in big numbers, nobody wants to play with me, right? Their network effects can be incredibly powerful, right? There are other things that can be really powerful, like brand, right? So think about Coca-Cola and Pepsi, right? People resonate with those brands, right? You could have a strategy of where, like, you are the most convenient, like McDonald's. Again, nobody goes to McDonald's because they think McDonald's has the best hamburger in the world, right? I mean, maybe some do, but most of us don't. We go to McDonald's because it's convenient, and if McDonald's has already snapped up all the prime real estate, right, it's going to be really hard for a competitor to come in and compete with them, right? Because they already have the real estate. They're not going to sell it to them, right? So those are different ways that you can do it. There's a lot of different ways. So you want to think about how your companies are creating some sort of monopolistic power. This is a slide that I really like in terms of illustrating some of the different strategies that companies will use. The axes here are a niche market versus a broad range of buyers, right? So that's hopefully pretty explanatory, right? I'm going to sell to a very specific target demographic versus I'm going to sell to everybody. And then we've got these two words. So one is low cost. Hopefully you all understand that. And the other one is differentiation. Anybody know what differentiation means? Kind of is what it sounds like.
It's most unique.
Yeah, you want to be different, right? Now, what I want you to think about when you think about differentiation is I want you, instead of just thinking different, I want you to think about like providing lots of benefits to the customer, okay? You could also view it as like high quality, right? Would be another way to look at it. So just to solidify this in your brains, let's talk about shoes, shoe brands, or shoe companies. What is a company that uses a broad differentiation strategy in the shoe business? So we're talking broad range of buyers, high quality.
It's Adidas.
Adidas, maybe? Nike. Nike is usually the one that everyone picks, right? Because you can buy soccer cleats, you can buy dress shoes, you can buy golf shoes, basketball shoes. I mean, they sell it all, right? And not only do they sell it all, it's like, what kind of basketball shoe do you want, right? We sell it all, right? So whoever you are as a buyer, Nike has a shoe for you, right? Does Nike sell really cheap, junky shoes? Some people are nodding their heads.
Sometimes.
It depends on the shoe, like you choose.
This is really situational.
Kind of depends, but for the most part, they're like decent quality shoes, right? Like, you know, I mean, all things being relative, right? How about a focused differentiation strategy? What's a shoe company that does that?
Sperry's.
Sperry's? Why Sperry's?
I say that because they're pretty much all the same,
Yeah.
no matter where you are, and the same people. If like someone's wearing Sperry's, I know what type of person they are.
Oh, wow, get judged by your shoes.
Absolutely.
Well, they make boat shoes, and that's pretty much it, right? They just make boat shoes. They're high
the
quality.
same, just different colors.
They're usually not that cheap, right? Yeah, you spend easily spend $100 on a pair of Sperry's, right? It's another company. If we had more women in here, there's a couple brands that usually come up. Yeah.
I was just saying, less popular one, but Gucci actually makes shoes. They don't have very many
Sure.
options, but they're like $2,000
Yeah.
for, only 5 different types of shoes.
Yeah, Gucci's a great example. Anybody heard of the brand Jimmy Choo? They make a lot of women's high heels that are very expensive. They would be another good example, right? Yeah?
I think Vans only make skate shoes.
Vans? Yeah, sure. Okay, so they make like kind of one type of shoe or one type of demographic, and their shoes are very high quality, high performance, whatever, right? Could be a lot of different things. You could also throw in here like companies that only make the very highest performance, bowling shoes. I don't know, right? Like they might fit in that bucket. All right, what about a focused low-cost strategy? You probably don't know a company brand that does this, but what would that company look like? Yeah. I would actually argue Toms are kind of expensive for what they are. Huh? I would argue Toms probably fits in a focused differentiation strategy, right? I mean, those shoes can't cost them more than like $5 to assemble, and they charge like $75 for
What
them.
about?
And they only make like 3 styles, right?
I'm gonna take a wild guess, but like Hyundai,
What do you mean Hyundai?
like the company Hyundai would be like a low cost niche market kind of car.
Car, but we're going to talk about shoes.
Oh, that's right, we're still on.
Yeah.
It'd be like Shaq's shoes, like he decided to be only one low cost shoes and they're all like this. He sold them for like 30, $40. It's like
Okay.
baseball shoes.
How many of you have been to Walmart and seen their shoe section?
Walmart.
I don't even think I've ever.
They do balance.
But you probably have walked by their shoe section, right? Do any of the shoes have brands on them?
Sketches.
No, they don't, right? There is a company. How about, give you another example. How about those flip-flops that are like a little piece of foam cut out in the shape of a foot with a plastic tube thing? Right? There are companies that all they do is make those sandals. That's it. They just pump them out, right? And they sell them to other companies for like $0.25 per sandal, right? And then those companies mark them up a few bucks and sell them to you on the beach or at Walmart or the Gap or whatever for like, a few dollars. Right? That's an example of a focused low-cost strategy. They don't even have a brand, right? I would argue most of the shoes that are sold at Walmart come from companies out of a focused low-cost strategy. They focus 100% on being the lowest cost provider, right? How about like a best cost? We cover lots of stuff, but not everything. Our shoes aren't total garbage, but they're not the highest quality either. But it's at an affordable price point. Skechers. Skechers is a great example, right? They do some dress shoes, some walking shoes, some running shoes, right? They're not like terrible quality, but they're affordable. What about this one? Overall low-cost leadership strategy. Yes?
Pay less shoes.
Pay less shoes, that's right? You walk in, I don't know, can you still walk into a Payless? I know they filed
I know
bankruptcy.
they filed, but yeah.
But you walk in and they sell it all too, right? Like they've got like dress shoes and walking shoes and hiking boots and running shoes. They got it all and it's all pretty affordable, right? Okay, does that make sense? So you gotta figure out with your company, what strategy are they pursuing, right? And with the exception of Payless Shoes, which Payless Shoes, by the way, until they went bankrupt recently, was like a great business, right? And they partially went bankrupt because the private equity investors over-levered them with debt. But before that, it was actually like a decent business. And you may scoff and say, "Oh, I would never buy Payless," but they had a targeted customer that loved buying shoes from them, right? And so all of these are viable strategies and make a lot of sense. What doesn't work for you though is if you're here and everybody else is here, right? And you're all fighting over that same customer, right? That doesn't work. So you want to be able to figure out where you are and where your competitors are positioning themselves. Are they providing a very high quality, very expensive product? Are they providing like that for a very, very small targeted demographic or customer? Or are they providing a low cost solution for everybody, right? And where are you and what are you trying to do? Position yourself. And then once you figured that out, you also want to spend some time looking at the market, which we're going to talk about now. Because the market is going to be like, the market you care about is going to be somewhere on this graph, right? And so you want to make sure that not only are you in a spot where nobody else is, but you're in the spot that has the largest market opportunity as well, relative to the number of competitors, right? So let's talk, any questions on strategy? Okay, hopefully that gives you like at least a good foundation of how to think through. Yeah.
Okay, I might have a question. So why would Payless be the overall low cost leadership strategy and not a focused low cost strategy? I guess that's kind of the question I have in my head.
Because they make more than just one shoe.
It's over like, so they've got like sandals and
Yeah, they got
high heels
sandals
or
and high
boots.
heels and
That's
hiking
what makes
boots
it
and
broad.
running shoes and everything else. So they have a broad range of buyers. Versus the company that all they do
Is make sandals.
is make sandals.
Okay.
That's all they do is they just make sandals. And they are hyper focused on being the cheapest company
Cheapest.
to make sandals out there.
That makes sense.
When you're looking at the existing market and evaluating, where existing companies and competitors are here, do you give more weight to someone that's been around longer, or are you looking at comparative startups? How do you feel about that?
In terms of evaluating,
Like if it's saturated.
like if a market is already saturated,
Like if we have, because ideally we'd be like the only person in one of these sections,
sure.
but do you give more weight to someone who's been there a long time? Do you give more weight to emerging startups?
So you would give more weight to companies that have more market share. I don't care how long you've been around, right? I care how much market share you have and how well you're solving the pain point customers have, right? And if I can solve it better and I can do it in a way that keeps you from doing it, then I'm going to win your customers away from you, right? And there are two ways, right? There are these two ways to win. Either I figured out how to do it cheaper than anybody else out there, and so I can undercut you all day long, or I figured out how to tap into a market that nobody else can get access to, right? By my brand or whatever it might be. My patents, or right? It could be a lot of things. Okay, let's talk about market. Anybody know who Ben Horowitz is? Anybody heard of the firm Andreessen Horowitz?
Oh,
So Andreessen Horowitz, they were an early investor in Lyft. They are one of the top venture funds in Silicon Valley. So Ben Horowitz is one of the founders, along with Mark Andreessen, who legitimately could make the claim that he invented the internet. He actually invented, or he started this company that made the first internet browser.
Netscape.
Called Netscape. That's right. So he was the founder of Netscape. That's a good guess. All right. So Ben Horowitz says we invest in college dropouts with insane ideas going after tiny markets with no way to monetize. Does that sound like a winning investment strategy?
no.
Doesn't really sound like a winning investment strategy, does it? So here's one of their companies they invested in. That's the original logo of the company. Let's talk about Airbnb. College dropouts. How many people are sleeping on other people's couches at that point and paying for the privilege? Not very many. Super teeny market. And how are they going to get somebody to pay for that? Right?
Yeah.
How big is Airbnb today?
It's massive.
Well, current estimates are around $40-ish billion in value. Okay. So what is Ben getting at here? Yeah.
I think by time markets that aren't big right now, but can grow based on
Yeah. Yeah.
The creation of that company or that idea they're investing in will create its own market and therefore have almost full control or dominate that market that they create. And it's going to attract then millions and millions of users or revenue or whatever else.
Yeah, it's very disruptive.
And then going with college dropouts with the same idea of no way to monetize. It's cheaper than someone who had to monetize.
Or maybe it's just people that aren't stuck in their ways, that are willing to take risks, dream big, change the world, right? Do you guys?
Yeah, I was just gonna say tiny markets would be something like, you don't know that you want it until you have it. Like, you didn't know that you needed access to houses like that until you have it.
Or you didn't even know that you could,
A market that
you know.
exists, and you're like, wow, this is,
Yeah, or you didn't know that you could rent a room in your house. And that would be okay, but you could make money from it, right? But honestly, is the market for Airbnb teeny? No. Why isn't it teeny? Even back before when they first made their investment in Airbnb.
Almost everybody has a home.
Okay, lots of people have homes with spare capacity. Yes?
They compete with hostels, like hospitality.
Yeah, so hospitality turns out is a very big industry, right? So they compete with that, and so there's this need, right? One of the unique things about Airbnb is not only is there this like need for hotels and hospitality and so forth, but there was a lot of pent up demand and desire from people that would like to travel but can't afford to stay in a hotel, right? And there was also a lot of people, and if you think about when Airbnb launched, they launched during the recession. So you had all these people that were underwater in their mortgage that needed a way, and the economy was down, so maybe they lost their job. They needed a way to pay for their mortgage payment, right? So again, life and death, right? Kind of pushing you onto that life and death spectrum. So Airbnb solves this by providing a way for the homeowners to make some additional income, and they allow other people to travel, especially during the recession when money is tighter, for a lot less money, right? Because I can stay in somebody's room that's just as nice as staying in a hotel for like $40 a night instead of $100 a night, right? That then grows the overall market, right? Expansion. All right. Who can remind me why we as venture capitalists invest in big markets? Yes?
valuation is a bigger net to capture.
That's right, because it's a bigger net to capture. Yes?
You need to recover the investment made in the failures. So you need to get the 10x.
Yeah, right? I need to get 10x or 20x my investment. And it's a lot easier to do that in a market that is very, very big, right? So this is the example that we did last week. If you weren't here, go watch the video that we did last week and we walked through the mathematical explanation. But basically, your market needs to be at least $1 billion. Now, $1 billion, that could be potential, like Airbnb, billion, right? But more ideally, the way I think about markets and their size is, how much are people currently paying to solve that pain point, right? And if people are currently paying like $1 billion or more to solve that pain point, it's probably a pretty compelling pain point to solve. Does that make sense? Or if they would be willing to pay, right? So if you're looking, let's say you're looking at a company in like the cryptocurrency space that uses blockchain in order to facilitate some new whatever, right? And you're like, well, nobody uses blockchain today to solve that problem, so my market's really teeny. What you need to be looking at is how are people currently solving that problem and how much are they spending to solve it, right? Could be a good parallel way to put a price tag on that market and evaluate whether or not it's big enough. Okay, let's talk about your market analysis. So, we talk a lot about TAM, SAM, and SOM, right? You may have talked about that in your marketing class or what have you. let's just work through an exercise together to solidify what that means and why it's important. So let's say you have a Chinese restaurant downtown Salt Lake City. What is your TAM, your total addressable market? What would that be? People that eat Chinese food, right? Or actually, it could probably be even just be like people that eat food, right?
So
That could be your TAM. It could be like everybody, right? So how valuable is your TAM? Using that definition. Not really valuable, right? It's like so like big as to be like useless. What would be a more helpful TAM in our example if you're the business owner? Another way to define it.
Maybe the amount of people who go out to eat Chinese food every month. Something like that.
It could be a number of people that go out that eat Chinese food. It could even just be like in in Salt Lake City, how many people are there? Right? That could be my TAM. Right? That's okay. That's a more useful number than like all people that eat ever, right? Okay, so that could be my TAM. And then my SAM is going to be based on my current business model. Now, my current business model is I sell Chinese food, right? And I sell Chinese food for lunch, and I sell Chinese food for dinner, okay? So now you're going to narrow it down to the people that actually eat Chinese food, right? Because that's my business model is I sell Chinese food. And people that eat out for lunch and people that eat out for dinner, right? That's my business model. So we're going to reduce it down. Yeah.
Could you just do like your restaurant at capacity?
So your restaurant capacity is going to be your sum.
Oh, okay.
It's based on the practical limits of your business model.
Oh, right there. Look at that right there.
Right there, right? Today, my restaurant, I only have one location and only holds as many people at any given time. That's my sum. Now, if I want to grow my sum, how do I do that?
For the restaurant.
I either expand my current restaurant or I pick up another location, right? Or how else could I do it?
Franchise?
Delivery,
Maybe franchise. I could do delivery. Those are all good options. Catering. What about if I offer Thai food too? That would also maybe expand my market, right? People that don't just like Chinese food, I can also add in
And
people that
sushi.
like Thai food and sushi and burgers and pizza, right? Now, you may not want to do that for other reasons, like we talked about in the strategy section, but you could, and that would grow your sum, right? I see another hand. Okay. All right, so does that make sense? And this is helpful, right? Because you can see what your TAM is. Like, okay, these are, everybody in my geographic region, for example, that like to eat. This is based on my current business model of like Chinese food and in a restaurant and so on and so forth, right? So it helps narrow it down. And then my sum is like, okay, this is where I'm at today, but this is how I could grow to capture my SAM eventually someday. Does that make sense? So if we're Airbnb, right, your TAM is probably all people that would like to travel, right, that need a place to stay, that need shelter, right? That's probably your TAM if you're Airbnb, okay, which is huge, but it's actually valuable information for them. When they first started, their SAM based on their current business model was like, maybe it's just like people that are willing to stay in other people's homes, right? Which was probably pretty small, right? But over time grew. And then the sum would be like places where they actually had homes where people could stay. And you can see over time how Airbnb's SAM has grown, and they've worked hard to get the SAM to grow, and they've also worked hard to get their sum to grow as well. Does that make sense? So all three of those could be really valuable because they can give you insight into the potential markets and the potential for growth of your company.
I was gonna ask, so with companies like Airbnb and Uber and stuff, does the total addressable market, does that not include the people on the other side, the drivers, the people who have houses who want to make money? Are those included?
Yeah, so those are like going to be two separate market analyses. And that's one of the challenges with like Airbnb and Lyft and Uber is that they operate these dual-sided marketplaces, right? But yeah, you could spend your time just looking at one or the other. But you're right, because they're kind of both sides of the same coin at the end of the day, right?
So last time we were together, you talked about how like a VC looks for a company that can at least be $1 billion market.
Yep.
Is that a TAM? Is that SAM or is it SOM?
Oh, that's a good question. What do you think?
I'm gonna guess SAM. I'm gonna guess that.
So it probably is your SAM. Yep. Because your SOM is probably going to be so broad as to not be horribly useful, right? But at a minimum, your TAM had sure better be at least $1 billion, right? Otherwise, you might be playing in an area that's like super niche, right? I will say though, like let's say you are going to invest in a pharma company that makes a drug for a very specific illness. Your SOM, SAM, and TAM might all be really close to the same size, right? But ultimately, when you release your product, you're going to be the only one on the market. You're going to own the whole market, right? And in that case, maybe it's okay that your TAM, your total market size, even at the TAM level, is at about $1 billion. Maybe that's okay, right? Because you're going to own the whole thing.
Do you think software is so successful because you're still on the same because you don't necessarily limit on how much you can sell software?
Yeah, that can be a very compelling reason, right? It's so scalable that the practical limits are pretty, like there are very few limits.
Yeah.
All right, any questions on market? Or at least TAM, SAM, and SOM? Okay.
What does the actual like SAM and SOM stand for? Like,
Total level
So
market.
TAM is total addressable market, SAM serviceable attainable market, and your SOM is, attainable,
So it's accessible.
Addressable.
market.
sorry, addressable.
Obtainable.
And then SOM is obtainable. That's right.
Okay, thanks.
All right, demographic. Okay, so some other things to think about in your market, right? You've got the size. Now you got to figure out like trends and direction and growth. So these can be some important things to think about, right? So like demographics and population, right? So like everybody like knows that baby boomers are like retiring, and so there's gonna be more demand for things that retired people want, like healthcare and retirement homes and yachts and stuff like that. And so you're like, great, like we're gonna see growth in the market size of all of those different industries. That could be a driver. Technological advances. So, when wireless headphones come out and they're actually affordable and the battery lasts long enough to be useful, like all of a sudden the market for wireless earbuds starts to go up. And then all the device manufacturers stop making aux ports on their phones, and then that drives further growth of that market, right? Those are all like technological advances that are pushing that growth. Product life cycle. So like eventually all products kind of hit saturation. And so where you are within that product life cycle, like right now, like wireless headphones are like growing pretty quickly, right? Because they're really popular and not everybody has a pair and they don't last forever and blah, blah, blah. But eventually like everybody will have a pair and that wants a pair, and they'll kind of plateau and not grow anymore. And then eventually like something else even better than like brain implants that just play music directly into your cerebral will like come out, and like that market will start to tank, right? So where you are in that product life cycle. You could have like external factors. 3% of people have celiac disease, right? I mean, it's like totally a trend. And it's very much culturally driven. And so those things can also drive different markets as well. All right. Any questions on market? Awesome. Let's talk about competition.
I have a question actually.
Yeah.
So when addressing markets with kind of the companies we narrowed it down to,
Yep.
when you're speaking to potential companies that you're considering doing investment in, what type of questions do you ask them to make sure they know they understand their market very well and that they're not over projecting?
When we meet with companies and we're asking them about market, we ask them questions to really understand who their target customer is. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that when we're evaluating the SAM and SOM, we're doing so accurately, right? So if we meet with a company that makes a product that could be broadly applicable to lots of different customers, but they tell us we're only targeting like these types, that's really helpful, right? In narrowing it down. And there are a lot of reasons for that, because like they may be tailoring their product specifically to that customer group, right? Such that even though like maybe it could still apply to other customers, they're not targeting that customer. I'll give you an example. We're an investor in a company called Kopari. Kopari makes coconut-based healthcare products, or not healthcare, more like skincare products. They make an all-natural deodorant based on coconut, and I think it retails for something like $15 to $20. Now, I only spend I wait until my deodorant goes on sale and I spend like $4 for it, right? $3 or $4, right? But there's a demographic of people out there that they want high quality. $15 is not a big deal for them to spend on deodorant. And not only that, because the deodorant's all natural and doesn't use any chemicals, it's arguably better for you. But you have to apply it twice a day. But there are people that they care about that. That's what they care about, right? And so the company is tailoring their product to that customer. Affluent, very health conscious, environmentally conscious, right? And they purchase stuff from Sephora, right? That type of customer, right? So that's really helpful when we're analyzing the market and trying to figure out who their target customer is. Because look, if you look at the TAM and you say the TAM is everybody who wears deodorant, right? That's probably not a good, useful fit for them. But you can narrow down the SOM to people that are affluent, that are willing to buy in that price range, or the SAM, and then you can narrow down your SOM to people that want the all natural or buy through those channels or whatever it might be. Right?
Okay. So for that specific example, that company,
yeah.
Was it advantageous to invest in them because you feel like there aren't any other deodorants that reach that type of customer?
So there are other deodorants that reach that type of customer, but we felt like their product was superior to a lot of the other ones on the market, if not all of them. So for example, their deodorant has been the #1 all natural selling deodorant on Amazon for the last 50 weeks or something like that. Right. People really like it. Yep.
How much credence do you give to design and aesthetics?
Yeah, I think that stuff matters.
Website structure.
Absolutely. Especially if you're doing your research on your target customer, and that's something that they place high value on.
So even at the start, that's still something you give pretty high value to.
It can be, yeah. I mean, ultimately, you want your product to really align with the wants and needs of your target customer, right?
Right market fit.
I'm not the target customer of Kopari, right? I just want my deodorant to be effective and smell decent, and I'm good to go, right? And be cheap. There are other people that want more. They want more out of life than their deodorant.
I
Yeah.
have a question on that though. Can you kind of talk about how that fits into what we talked about at the beginning, the tourniquet example of I need this or I'm gonna die type thing?
Yeah.
With that deodorant company.
Sure. So we'll just stick on the deodorant part of what they do.
Mm-hmm.
So traditional deodorant uses aluminum. Aluminum gets in your skin. The molecule is too big to pass through, and so it ends up clogging up your pores. And there's concern that it can ultimately end up causing cancer and other issues. So if you are worried about that sort of thing,
I
right?
am now.
Then you might want to buy deodorant. Now, all natural deodorant that does not use aluminum. Now the challenge you have is, how do you find something that's actually effective?
market became bigger, man.
You know, that's really tough. You have to then choose. Do I want to stink, right? Or do I want to have something that's effective? So you go out and you look at all the all-natural product deodorants that are out there, and what you find is the vast majority don't actually work. And it turns out Kopari's does because there's coconuts are kind of natural antibacterial, and so it helps keep you smelling fresh. Now, it is not as effective as aluminum, frankly. Right? It doesn't actually block your pores, which is why you have to apply it twice a day. Right? But if you care about that, kind of life and death on the spectrum, right? You're willing to pay for it. Now, is it the same as like, you know, if I really, you know, am I gonna die because I use like Old Spice? Maybe, but it's not gonna be for a long time, right? Like, hopefully. But like, again, it's on that spectrum. Maybe it's not all the way down here, right? Maybe it's somewhere over here. And that's okay, like I said before, right? It would be better if it was, you know, all the way down here and they owned the patent on it, nobody could touch them, but. All right, let's talk about competition. Keep coming along here, because we still have quite a bit left to cover. This is how I think about competition. I really like evaluating competition from what I call the value chain perspective. So value chain is just, I think we talked about this last week, right? It says every step at which value is added. So like if I, like I used to do, for example, right? I plant trees, harvest those trees, that's my raw material. I turn that wood from paper pulp into paper. Or wood pulp into paper, and then I distribute that paper out through, like, you know, bookstore or Staples or Amazon or whatever it may be. So that's my value chain, right? That all makes sense? Yes?
What's considered raw material for like software?
It's a good example or a good question. Could be just people, right? People that know how to code. Could be capital, because you got to be able to pay them, right?
Place to do it with computers.
Place to do it, computers, all these, all the inputs, and then you manufacture the software, and then you got to distribute the software. Something, right? So to make this concrete, let's use my example of a ham sandwich. So I got my ham sandwich. I manufacture the sandwiches, right? Get the bread, put the meat on there, put another slice of bread, boom, sandwich is manufactured. I have supplier power, right? There's people that supply me with bread, and then there's buyer power. This would be like a restaurant that buys my ham sandwich and then distributes it to their customers. If I have lots of buyers, then buyer power is low, right? Because if one buyer says, I don't like your ham sandwiches, I can go to several other buyers. But on the flip side, if there's only one company that makes bread and they have the patent on bread making, I'm kind of stuck buying from them and they have a lot of power over me, right? You also have the concept of rivalry. So like, there's this other company that makes ham sandwiches and instead of like selling them whole, they cut them in half diagonally, right? But it's still a ham sandwich. So we're like competing. It's rivalry. There's also this threat of new entrants. So there's this other company and they use like this different type of bread, still a ham sandwich, and they're gonna enter the market, right? With their new bread type, right? So that could be like threat of entrance. And then you also have substitutes where like pizza, right? You hold it with your hand and you eat it and it's convenient. It's not a ham sandwich, but I definitely compete with pizza, right, as a ham sandwich company, right? Does that make sense? Anybody know what I just illustrated here?
Is it Porter's 5 Forces?
Porter's 5 Forces, that's what it is. So Porter's 5 Forces applies to an industry, not an individual company, but hopefully you can see along the value chain how it all fits together. Does that make sense? So the reason I illustrate it this way is because when you're evaluating the competition, these are the different types of categories you need to pay attention to. Everybody gets that you gotta focus on the other people that make ham sandwiches, but oftentimes they forget how hard is it for another company to start making ham sandwiches and start competing with me? And are there other substitutes that are competing with me? For example, who do you think is the #1 competitor with movie theaters? Yes?
Netflix.
Netflix is probably one of them. Anybody think of another competitor? Yeah?
YouTube.
YouTube? Okay, YouTube is definitely a competitor. Who else? What's another idea? Thinking outside the box. Yes?
I would dare to say even activities like bowling or a leisure Friday night, get together with friends.
Okay, that is competitive. I'd agree. Let me ask you this: do you guys, where do you spend your time? Your leisure time. What do you do in your leisure time? If you're being honest with yourself.
Just like your couch at home.
Sitting on your couch doing what? Just sitting there.
Your phone.
What do you do on your phone?
Watching or consuming some kind of media or talking to people. Social media.
Social media?
Games.
Some people are really into video games instead of social media, but a lot of people are into social media. So, turns out that one of the things that is killing movie theaters is not Netflix, it's social media. Because at the end of the day, it's like, I'm going to entertain myself for free with some social media, right? I'm not going to go to the movies. So if you're a company and you totally miss out on like that substitute, if you're in the movie theaters, like you're getting crushed and you don't even know why.
Movie theaters next week are gonna come out and so turn off your cell phone. It's gonna be like snap your story or whatever. Who knows?
Maybe they should, right? Maybe they'd have better attendance. Maybe you need to open up a movie theater that like proactively encourages people to like engage on social media while they're in the movie. I don't know. But nonetheless, like when you guys are evaluating, you need to pay attention to your substitutes, right? Okay. The other thing is you got to pay attention to your suppliers, right? Because your suppliers might be cutting you off, or they could start moving into your market. How hard do you think it is for the bread company to start making sandwiches? Pretty easy, right? They just got to like cut it and put some ham between it, and they're done, right? So oftentimes you can have some threat from your suppliers moving into your industry. And the same thing with your buyers. How hard is it for a restaurant to be like, yeah, we could cut the bread and put the ham between it too, right before we give it to our customer, right? So sometimes you'll have buyers moving in as well, both of which ultimately are called vertical integration, which I know I've drawn this horizontally, so it doesn't really make sense, but that's just the term in the industry. Horizontal integration would be as if you went and you bought up all the other ham sandwich manufacturers. Does that make sense? That'd be horizontal. Okay. So ultimately, what you're trying to figure out is who will win. What that means is you really have to understand your customer, you really have to understand the pain point, and you have to understand how you are solving it and how your competition is solving that pain point, right? Now, like pizza versus ham sandwich, right? Both, you can hold it and eat it. They're both pretty convenient. Arguably, pizza's less convenient because it doesn't last as long, right? Like it gets cold and then it's not as good. The ham sandwich lasts a little bit longer. So you can make an argument that for the target customer that values like convenience and the ability to pack it and longevity, like the ham sandwich is gonna win that particular customer, right? Or it could just be like, we're targeting people that like ham sandwiches over pizza. I don't know who those people are, they're weirdos, but they could exist, right? And so that's your target customer and that's what you care about, right? You can make those arguments. You should do your research to figure it out, right? Do you see what I'm saying? So one of the ways to kind of illustrate that is going back to our earlier example of that strategy map, right? And so this is an example of a company that they were trying to illustrate how they fit relative to their competition. So you had this company did, let me back up. This company did social media management tools. So they'd help you manage your Facebook posts and your Instagram posts and so on and so forth. So what they were trying to say is like there are open platforms and there are closed niche platforms, and then there's companies that offer a single product and ones that offer a comprehensive solution. So like what they were getting at is there are companies like Buffer that helps you manage, like you can schedule all of your social media posts, and then they'll just automatically post throughout the month at the designated time and date. And Buffer integrates with lots and lots of different other platforms. So open platform, but they just do one thing, right? And then you have other companies that like they do it all, but they don't integrate with anybody, right? And then what this company was trying to do is say like, look, we are going to do it all, but we're also going to integrate with everybody, and we're going to be a centralized platform where you can do it all. Does that make sense? And that's how they were trying to describe like, hey, this is how we are positioned relative to our competition. And by the way, this is what customers really want. And then they had a whole defensive argument around like, customers, they don't want to have a million apps for every single little solution, right? But they do want to be able to connect with lots of different products. So they don't want to be stuck in a closed system either. They want the best of both worlds. That's what we're going to do. Does that make sense? All right. So this can be a really helpful tool to kind of illustrate how you compare to your competition, and hopefully also illustrate like, look, customers want, like we did our customer research. We went and talked to a bunch of customers. We did surveys. We did whatever. We read research reports, and customers are begging for an open platform and a comprehensive solution. And so that is why we're going to win, because we offer that relative to our competitors that don't. Right? Does that make sense? So that's how you would start structuring that argument around your competition and why you would win. So some things to include in your analysis: who are the top competitors, right? What factors will determine who will win? So these factors could be everything from like, well, we have the most effective deodorant, all natural deodorant. That may not be enough. That's probably not enough, right? Just because I have the best product doesn't mean I'm going to win. What else do I got to have?
The right team.
You got to have the right team. What else? How are people going to find out about my
Your
really great
distribution
all-natural deodorant? I
market.
can have a really good marketing strategy, right? That appeals to my target demographic. So my target demographic spends a lot of time on Instagram, then I sure as heck better do a really good job getting in front of the top influencers for skincare products and so forth, and getting them to talk about my product, right? Or if my target demographic only buys from Sephora because they believe Sephora only has the very best products, the highest quality, and the most efficacious, then I better be selling my product through Sephora, right? And I better have the resources, the funding, in order to win as well, right? So you want to look at your different competitors, and you want to look at like, what is it going to take for these for the winner to win, basically, for one of these companies to win, and which of these companies has that? And hopefully it's your company, right? If not, then you probably need to pick one of your other three on your list. Right? All right. How is your company positioned against the competition? So I just showed that one slide. It can be a really effective way for doing that. And then what are your company's sources of competitive advantage? Competitive advantage is all about, right, what keeps other companies from copying them or selling to the same customer. So here's one of the challenges of Uber and Lyft. Uber is the bigger company, but it turns out that like Lyft was the one that has innovated the most on product. The problem is that Uber just copies their product, because nothing that Lyft has done product-wise has really like been a sustainable competitive advantage at the end of the day. It can be easily copied, right? So that's the problem. Where Lyft and Uber have done a good job relative to each other is actually on the second piece, selling to the same customer. Because generally, a lot of people are loyal to one or the other. Does that make sense? And they've done that like very specifically. Uber's tagline is everyone's private driver, right? Get in the back seat. You have a private driver, they're gonna drive you wherever you wanna go. You don't have to talk to them, you just sit on your phone and look at social media the whole time. And Lyft originally came out and they were like, their tagline was, your friend with a car. Get in the front seat, fist bump the driver, chat it up, have a great experience, right? They're both appealing to very different target customers. Does that make sense? And they were trying to make it more difficult to sell to their same customer. So for example, Lyft for a long time allowed the passengers to give a tip to the drivers. And Uber did not. Because Uber is like, no, this is your private driver. Like, you know, it's all about convenience and like they show up and they take you and they drop you off and, you know, it's all very clean and so on and so forth. Whereas Lyft was like, no, this is your buddy. You want to help your buddy out, give him a tip, right? So again, kind of appealing to a different customer through their brand and creating a very different experience. So you want to be thinking about like, what is your company's source of competitive advantage? Do they have patents that make it difficult for someone to copy to them? Do they have like a really strong brand? Do they position themselves in a way that really appeals to people, right? Like Tom's shoes, right? I can buy any shoes, but I buy Tom's shoes because I want to feel good about myself because they're going to give a pair to somebody that doesn't have shoes in a third world country, right? The type of person that buys from Tom's is not necessarily the same type of person that buys from another shoe brand because the other shoe brand doesn't communicate that same value proposition, right? All right. So, some guidelines on your diligence write-up. Okay, so you want to talk about what is the pain point, who is the customer, and how does the company solve that pain point. We also want to spend some time on how does the company capture at least some of the value that they are creating for the customer, or in other words, how do they monetize? Yes, Brooke?
Just for reference, this PowerPoint presentation will be on the website, so you don't need to aggressively take notes. Just a fun fact.
Awesome.
So you will have
You
access
don't
to it
have to
later.
aggressively take notes on what's on the screen.
Yeah, but definitely take notes, but you don't need to like write it down word for word because you'll have access to it later.
Yes. Okay. So those are the things you definitely want to cover there, right? Walk us through the business model. Walk us through the product. Tell us why it's so great, right? Tell us like why the customers just have to have it. Why it's life and death, right? Then you want to talk about market size. How big is the market, right? TAM, SAM, SOM. Is the market growing? How quickly is it growing? And what's driving the growth, right? And then competition. Who are the top competitors? How is your company positioned against them? And what are your company's sources of competitive advantage? What's going to keep the competitors from either copying your business or stealing away your customers? That make sense? Okay, that kind of brings us to the end. These are some dates. We're halfway through. So, today we're here. Tonight, selection is due. Really excited to see the companies you guys have sourced. Question?
Yeah, with your 3 companies that you select and submit,
Yeah.
let's say, is that like the end all be all? So after that submission, you can't submit another company? Let's say all 3 of you don't like.
Let's say, yeah, you
Worst
start
case
digging
scenario.
through your diligence and you hate all 3 and you scrap them all. Yeah, you can find another one.
Okay.
But what we want by making you select 3
It's progress.
is we want progress.
Yeah.
No, we don't want you procrastinating and doing it all at the end, right? So if you really don't love any of those 3, you can start over. But like you're gonna have so much to do that
Just go for it.
you really don't want to start over. And remember, it's going to be about 50-50 split between the quality of the company and the level of diligence you do. So even if your company, and my bet is that most of you are not going to be able to find like the next Google, which is totally fine. You can kind of make up for it on your diligence. So, did you have a question?
Yeah, is the memo format solely text, or can we reference like graphics?
Oh, I love graphics.
Okay.
Yeah.
Necessary.
Text, graphics, charts, pie charts, tables.
Do you prefer for
All
the
that's
ones
awesome.
that we've created, or can we use?
No, you can
something
use
that
other
is
stuff.
provided?
It's fine. As long as it's reputable, right?
So I have two questions. One, do you have a place or anywhere we can go and kind of find good memo formats, kind of how this should be formatted? Or are we gonna go for that in the second part of the due diligence?
No, we're not really gonna spend a lot of time on it. I've included a bunch of little things that you can throw in,
Okay.
right? Like the strategy map, for example.
Right.
But yeah, no, there's no like real set template
Okay.
that we provide. Partially because we want to see how you think through it and put it together yourself.
Awesome. And then my second question is, do we need to have facts and stuff specifically sourced? Kind of like.
Well, you can't make up facts.
right. You need to like put annotate it and then have like a bibliography or like for sure. Has that kind
That would be good to have to cite your sources.
of awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, it'll make you appear more credible.
Great.
Good question.
What did you say about that, sir? That
You should cite your
you should
sources.
cite all the sources have a reference page.
Reference page or footnotes. I actually like footnotes because I can just see the reference right there on the same page. Whatever you want to do is fine. Doesn't matter. Just if you're gonna throw out like numbers of like market sizes and growth and stuff, like you should validate it with some sources. All right, that brings us to the end. So next workshop is due diligence 2. We're gonna cover like financials and returns and some fun stuff like that. That is November 13th at UVU. And remember your assignment, top 3 companies tonight. Your initial diligence report is due November 16th. Our goal is to get that turned around and decided for the finalist 5 teams within a few days so that we can match you up with your mentors as soon as possible. So that you can get as much out of that interaction with the mentors as possible. We've lined up some of the top VCs here in Utah to be mentors. So there's a really cool opportunity for you to network with them, learn from them, engage with them. So it's your initial due diligence report. Remember, you're basically gonna go through that. We're gonna give you a bunch of feedback on it. You're gonna work with your mentor, and you're gonna ultimately take what's in that report and put it into a presentation. I will also note that your memo doesn't have to be in Word. If you would like to do it as a presentation, you can. The difference is that it ultimately should be a very meaty presentation because you're not going to be able to sit there and walk us through the presentation, right? So your call. But honestly, I don't care if it comes to us in PowerPoint format, Keynote,